Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this session of the European Research and Innovation Days dedicated to energy, and in particular, the role of clean energy innovation in support of the Green Deal and the digital transition, which lie at the heart of Europe's post-COVID recovery strategy. My name is Patrick Child. I am Deputy Director General in DG Research and Innovation in the European Commission, and it's my huge pleasure to be moderating this event around one of the core themes of the European Green Deal with a very distinguished panel of experts who are going to, I'm sure, have a very lively and interactive discussion around this important topic. Energy and the clean energy transition is, as I've said, at the heart of some of the major global challenges that we're facing in Europe, whether it's climate change, whether it's the COVID recovery, whether it's the digital transformation agenda. And as we've heard from this morning, from our Commissioner, Maria Gabriel, from Executive Vice President Frans Timmermans, and from many others, the European Green Deal is a real opportunity for European research and innovation to make a powerful difference in transforming our societies and our lives for the better in future. And when we're looking at the energy transformation, we're talking about a number of different themes. We're talking about renewables, the place of renewables in our mobility system, in the way we use and build buildings, or in heavy industry. We're talking about the way we produce, the way we store energy and electricity, and the needs of the evolving grid systems that we have. We're talking about circularity, how we use materials to produce and use energy in ways that can limit the environmental footprint. We're also talking about the social and socio-economic aspects of the energy transition to ensure that nobody is left behind and that we give attention to issues like energy poverty. And we're also looking at some of the major themes in the evolving energy system, and particularly the exciting opportunities that, for example, hydrogen may bring in order to equip Europe to rise to these challenges. The recent months have seen some huge progress in equipping the European Union with the means to address these challenges, whether it was the breakthrough agreement among Europe's leaders in the summer on our budget cycle for the next 7 years, combined with the new recovery package, the next generation EU major increase in our economic and financial firepower, and more recently, and a topic we'll be looking at separately as part of these European Research and Innovation Days, the €1 billion Green Deal call, which goes to the heart of some of the challenges for the Green Deal. So the questions that I'm going to turn to in a moment with our distinguished panelists are, well, delving into these challenges for the energy system. You know, what about sustainability? How do we measure sustainability? And how do we ensure that what we do is not only responding to today's challenges, but also making an investment in the sustainability for the future? What are the roles of different actors, ranging from our citizens, from our research community, from policymakers, and also the way we engage both with actors at a national level and at the international level. Important international fora like Mission Innovation, the global clean energy community, which holds its ministerial meeting tomorrow with the participation of our Commissioner, Maria Gabriel. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our three panelists. So firstly, we have Sandrine Dixon-de Clèves, who is co-president of the Club of Rome and a special advisor to the Energy Transition Committee. And at a European level, she's also chair of ESIR, our high-level group working with the Commission on the economic and societal impact of research and innovation. And she brings many, many years of experience in international policy, in climate change, sustainable development, and sustainable finance. So very happy to have Sandrine with us. Also, Lena Kitzing. Lena is head of the Energy Economics and Regulation Group within the Management and Sustainability Division at the Technical University of Denmark, and her work has a strong focus on the renewables and in particular the offshore wind sector, and we're looking forward to her insights also on the economic dimensions of that. And finally, with an industry perspective, we have Nicola Rossi, who is Head of Innovation at Global Power Generation Division at Enel, where he is responsible for innovation projects at a global level. And his many areas of expertise cover different aspects of the power generation system, from biomass, geothermal, and solar, as well as some of the digital challenges that we're facing, for example, the Internet of Things and the challenges of energy storage. So now I'd like to pass over to our panelists and give them a very brief opportunity to introduce themselves. Then we're going to have 2 rounds of questions to delve into some of the issues I've set out in this introduction. So we'll start with Sandrine. A couple of minutes of introduction from you. Welcome. I'm very happy to have you with us. Sandrine.
Thank you so much, Patrick, and I'm very happy to be here. I think that this week is really incredibly important if we look at research and innovation and the work that I'm trying to do through the Club of Rome, but also as ambassador to the Energy Transition Commission and many of the advisory board roles that I hold for industry, BMW on their mobility role with regard to sustainability, and also European Aluminium with regard to how they actually become much more sustainable. And if we look at the issue of energy, energy is fundamental because it truly is propping up the economy of yesterday. If we're going to shift and make ourselves more resilient, we must pull out of fossil energy as soon as possible. What we've been asking for in our planetary emergency plan from the Club of Rome is to ensure that we actually move out of fossil years, and we triple our investments annually in renewables. So what I want to finish off with is that I think that this is a very timely conversation, but we need to move from words to action. And I think that is absolutely fundamental. And then I will bring in the ETC when we get into the specifics, because the Energy Transition Commission is really looking at where are the solutions with industry to ensure that that transition happens as soon as possible and does bring people on the journey and ensures that we protect our planetary boundaries.
So, Sandrine, thank you very much. You clearly do bring, as I said, a wealth of experience of all dimensions of this issue, and so we're really looking forward to the conversation with you. But now to Lena, please, if you could introduce yourself briefly, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I can say maybe I have been working for the energy transition for around 15 years now. 10 of which in research, but I've also seen how the industry sector works. And I very much welcome that, especially also now in this week, energy research is really, really high on the agenda. And it's rightly so, because the energy transition is the core of the transition to a sustainable Europe. And I'm here today because I'm kind of representing the research side in that clean energy transition. And I'm really happy to be here because I am personally working in this interface between technology and economics and the social sciences in that energy transition. I'm working at a technical university right now, and I'm heading a section on energy economics and regulation. And it is that combination of different disciplines that will, help us to achieve this energy transition in the future. And I'm going to share a couple of perspectives with you that I have in relation to that multidisciplinary research challenge that we are around. And I have to say that I very much welcome the Green Deal initiative. It's very application oriented, and we expect a lot of impact from that. So it's a very important part of the jigsaw that we are trying to put together for creating this sustainable future in Europe.
Great, thanks very much. And indeed, we're looking forward to your perspective also from the academic community. But now to move to industry and to Enel. Nicola, please, if you could say a few words to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here today, to be part of this discussion, and to have the opportunity to present the industry perspective in this transitioning period. I think it's really an interesting period to work in energy in this space, because things are moving fast and moving, I think, in the right direction, the direction of sustainability, in the direction of long-term sustainability. I'm head of innovation. I work in Enel Green Power. Enel Green Power is a leading global player in the renewable sector. We are present in more than 30 countries with more than 46 gigawatt of renewable installed capacity and 1,300 plants distributed in many different countries and in 5 continents. I want to start from an observation. So renewable are really growing, and they are growing faster than what we expected in the past. And every year, the forecast in the growth is reviewed and is higher than was planned previously. This is a fact. And we as a company, we are continuously updating our renewable development plan in order to increase our velocity in this transition. So we have in the next 3 years, the plan to build something in the order of 14 gigawatt of new renewable installed capacities. But this takes some challenges in front of us. First of all, the market is becoming very competitive. Okay, so we need competitive solutions in order to remain and to stay in the market. Secondly, we need to manage the complexity of building many different plants in many different sites across different geographies and continents. And this is a big complexity that we need to manage in order to be fast in this transformation. We need to increase the size of the plants in order to make them more competitive and more efficient. We need to remain at the technology frontier because it is something, the renewable sector, that is evolving also from a technology perspective very fast. And so you have continuously to innovate your technologies in order to stay on the scene. So I think that in all these challenges, research and innovation play a key role, and allows the transformation that we are living. And this is why I'm very happy to be here and to have the opportunity to think about this in a very wide perspective, taking into consideration technology, regulation, and also ecosystem factors.
Okay, well, look, thank you all for introducing yourselves. And I think that it's a really great sort of complementary mix of background, skills and experience, which I think equips us for a really rich and exciting discussion today. And so I'd like to kick off our first round of sort of probing questions for our panelists. And I'd like to start with you, if I may, Sandrine. You talked about the Green Deal, the importance in the Green Deal of developing a power system which is largely based around electrification and renewable energy sources. I wonder if you could just give us your perspective on whether you think governments are doing enough, or whether there's more that we should be doing as governments, as policymakers, in order to boost clean energy innovation and research in support of the European Green Deal. So, Sandrine.
Thanks, Patrick. No, I don't think governments are doing enough. And I think there are a few key issues. Now, obviously, we're in an economic setback because of COVID. And this is the moment to really shine and to demonstrate that we can actually transition to a green economy and to much more decarbonized energy use. We know that renewables are now comparable in price to non-renewable energy, and yet we're not shifting at the pace that's necessary to meet our climate neutrality goals, or even the 2030 goal that now has just been proposed by our leader and President, European Commission, President von der Leyen. So I do believe that actually this is why we must get industry together with policymakers and bring forward the proof points that we actually can transition at this time, even coming out of COVID, that it can actually make our economy more resilient. The best way to do that is to ensure that we integrate policy that is focusing on energy efficiency first. We have to improve living standards across the globe in developing countries as well as in the European Union. But we can do this by making dramatic improvements in our energy efficiency. And this, alongside a shift in a circular economy, will also reduce our imprint with regard to materials. Then we need to scale up the clean energy provision across a massive scale. So the building sector, move towards electrification in terms of our vehicles, ensure that we're looking at heating and cooling, as well as the power sector. And I think, again, kudos to Enel and other power sector companies in Europe who are really shifting. But we haven't done half of what we need to do in other parts of the value chain, looking at industry and their usage of energy, looking at, again, the housing sector and how we use energy there. So I would say we know we have the technological solutions. What we now need is the political will. The Green Deal is a new compass that is steering us in this direction. What we need with the Green Deal, and this is why actually the Energy Transition Commission alongside the Club of Rome will be coming out in the next week with a compass of how we can actually steer the European Green Deal into an integrated policy plan for policymakers across the European Union, and hopefully that will show leadership elsewhere. I'll close with one last point, which is that the Energy Transition Commission has just released a report called Making Mission Possible, Delivering a Net Zero Economy. And this report goes specifically into the detail of taxation policies and the type of underpinning financial and economic policies that we need to bring industry on board and to really shift. So again, we have the solutions at hand. We know where we need to go. Now we need the political will to get it done.
Thanks very much, Sandrine. And I think that takes us rather naturally to my next question, which is going to be for Lena, because I think we can see indeed that the technologies are to a large extent there, particularly when we're talking about the massive increased rollout of renewable solutions. But there's still a big question about the economics, the competitiveness. What more do we need to do to make some of these new renewable technologies deployed at scale in a way which is cost efficient, competitive and economically viable by comparison with the more traditional polluting sources of energy. So Lena, please.
Thank you very much. I think it's quite interesting that you ask about competitiveness, because so for me, competitiveness is a necessary condition, but it's not sufficient for success of renewables, right? Because if we think about the levels that are, for example, set out in the Clean Planet for All strategy by the EU, we need really massive amounts of renewables, and you have already mentioned that. We needed more and a faster scale than we have seen before. Just to put a number of it onto it, I think it would be around 20 to 30 large wind turbines every day over the next decades, and also the same amount or even more large solar panels and other technologies. So we will need to decarbonize the system at scale and very fast. And if you think about R&I, we can help to bring down the cost of that, there's no question. And because also, if you think about it, even if it's just a little bit per unit, it will have a huge return on investment for society. But we have to think about that the energy system, it contains many interlinked systems. So it's not only about the technology itself and bringing down costs in one technology, right? There is technologies, but there is also infrastructure, the economics and financing of it, society, behavior, and then we have policy regulation. So it requires actually much more coordinated research as an interdisciplinary challenge. When you ask me about R&I in the clean energy area and how we can make renewables more competitive, it's often mentioned that we need to integrate renewables better into the system. So the discussion has shifted quite a lot about how can we integrate the technologies, how can we, and it's also right, we need to develop the systems thinking regarding enabling technologies and also enabling products and services. We need flexibility, solutions, storage. We need to think much more sector coupling than we do. And also, I think that digitization will help a lot in that systems understanding. Because only when we understand these future systems better, we can also imagine new ones, how they should look like. Mm-hmm. But I think what is receiving really too little focus is that we still need basic science. We hear more and more that renewable technologies have become mature. The solutions are there, as Sandrine said. And actually, you can say that in some way they have grown out of infancy, but it doesn't mean that we have figured it all out. There is still a lot to be done in performance enhancement, cost reduction, both on component, but also on system level. And just I'll just give you a couple of examples. So, there's a lot of room for developing larger technologies. So research in scale. We can bring in new materials. There needs to be research done. And then a focus on reliability and controllability of the production. will help a lot to bring down cost and to integrate the renewables better. And overall, I think it's very important that we have value-focused innovation. That is something that needs to be developed. So we're linking the technology level with the systems thinking in the innovation process. And that would bring a whole new quality to these technologies. And a second element that gets too little attention, I think, is how we can future-proof technologies. So here I'm talking about circularity. You have mentioned it, zero waste, low emission production. So it's much broader than competitiveness and bringing the costs down. And also, when we're talking about a sustainable future with renewables, we need to become much better at embedding those technologies in their natural and social environment. Yeah. That is what we need to research about. So yes, bringing down costs, but much more research to discover synergy and interaction potentials. Because in reality, for us, it's not about competition between the technologies. For this transition, we will need all the renewables and all the enabling technologies in the market to make a transition happen. Okay. And therefore, I think that synergies are just as important as competition.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lena. A lot to think about there. But I would like to move on to Nicolas to get an industry perspective. I mean, obviously, Enel is one of the big beasts in the sort of energy landscape in terms of the European industry in the European Union and beyond. And you're engaged in many different topics, as you said in your introduction: smart grids, hydrogen, energy storage, enablers of energy integration. And so I'd like to hear a little bit from your perspective as a major industrial player. What would you see as the big research and innovation priorities for the way ahead?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I would start from clarifying one point. We do not to make renewable competitive anymore, in the sense that renewables are already competitive and stay on the market today respect to conventional generation. So if I look at our investment plan in generation technologies in the coming 3 years, we have approximately 40 billion of investments in renewable development. And these investments are not based on subsidies, but they are based on the fact that these solutions are competitive with potential options. So this is one point that I would like to focus on. But of course, speaking of renewable are not all the same. So I'm mainly referring to the two main technologies that, in our perspective, will drive the renewable growth in the coming period. That will be wind and solar. Okay. Then there are a number of other options that are probably something that we will see in a longer term. That for sure needs some further developments in order to become more competitive and interesting from an economical perspective. But say that, and coming to your question, which is the big challenge we see. Basically, the big challenge we see is to pass from renewable generation to sustainable generation. Okay, so when you speak about renewables, you don't speak necessarily of something that is fully sustainable in the long run. So today, renewables are seen as the solution of the problem because we have the problem to decarbonize the planet, and for sure, we have the solution. But if we think, for example, to what happened with cars, with fuel engines, they were the solution of the problem in the moment they were introduced into the market, because they solved a lot of problems of mobility and they simplified a lot the life of people, but they have become today the problem themselves. And so electric mobility is the solution for this problem. Okay, so we have to think in a perspective way and to think that renewables that today are the solution of a problem could in the future become themselves a problem. So this is where I think we need to think in an innovative way. Okay, we need to think innovative solutions in order to make renewable more sustainable in the long run. And what does it mean, practically speaking? It means to increase the efficiency, for sure, because increasing the efficiency, we better use the resource, we better use the land in case of PV, and so we increase the sustainability of the plants in general terms. We need to reduce the impacts, okay? And reduce the impacts means basically, for example, reduce the land occupation of the PV plants, so again, efficiency, but also integrate PV with other options to valorize the land. So we are thinking, for example, to couple PV with agriculture in many different areas of the world, because this means if we will be able to do that, that we are using in a better way the land that is itself a resource. And this is just an example. And the third area that I see as a key lever in terms of sustainability is circularity. So we need to develop solutions that are able to be managed in terms of end of life, because as renewable plants will increase a lot in terms of numbers everywhere in the world, sooner or later we will face the problem of managing their end of life. And if we look to wind, for example, today, many of the components of wind generators are disposed. And for sure, if you scale up this problem in 10 years from now, it is not sustainable at all. So we need to find new technologies in order to recover these materials and to reuse these materials, perhaps in other sectors. And we have also to develop new designs of these technologies that are circular by design. So are made of materials that are easy to recover, to reuse, and to reintroduce in the value chain. Okay, so this is basically the approach we have to innovation in the renewable area, and these are the challenges that we have in front of us in the coming year.
Okay. Nicola, thank you very much. I think all our speakers have in one way or another underlined in particular the importance of sustainability, circularity, and the sort of integration between the many different moving parts in the energy system. So I'd like now to come back with our second round of questions to Sandrine, who, as I said at the beginning, is the chair of our Horizon 2020 high-level expert group on economic and social impacts of research and innovation, and therefore, very much at the center of providing advice to us in the European Commission. And so I just wonder whether you want to share with us your thoughts on whether you think the European Union is sufficiently well equipped to accelerate the energy transition in terms of the knowledge, tools and the support that we're able to bring to member states and to industry and to the scientific community. And in particular, whether we are well placed to respond to the systemic challenges that the post-COVID-19 recovery presents to us.
I personally think that what we're seeing in COVID is the greatest opportunity we've ever seen to really test to transform. What we've done through the economic and societal analysis within the ASEER group, so looking at the impact of innovation, is to evaluate what can we learn from COVID, and then how can we transform those learnings into immediate systems change within a variety of different sectors. The key proposals that we have actually in our latest paper, Protect, Prepare and Transform Europe, is to really address this issue of recovery and resilience. If we look at the energy sector, we know that we need to enhance the investment across infrastructure, distribution, and absolutely ensure that we optimize both the supply and the demand factors within our system. We also need to see where we can actually integrate that system. And exactly as was indicated by the previous speaker, how do we look at agriculture and energy together and look at the way in which we can actually create a much more integrated approach with regard to ensuring decarbonization, but also ensuring resilience of our land. I've just been asked to actually chair the new Food Resilience Task Force for the UN Food Summit. And within that context, in the last conversation that we had in speaking to some of the top producers of food, the energy, land, and water nexus is absolutely fundamental. So where does innovation kick in? Innovation kicks in and by being something that's not just within a lab. I think traditional innovation in the past, and that's why the movement at DG Research and Innovation is so phenomenal and fundamental in its new focus of people, prosperity, and planet, which is to look at how innovation translates across those three. How do we ensure that we keep people's lives and livelihoods? How do we at the same time ensure that we protect the planetary boundaries? And then how do we ensure that we actually have prosperity that continues as we move forward? And if we take energy as the case in point, where then do we innovate to ensure all three? And what I'm going to say to you, Patrick, is also, where do we unpack the tensions? Because the key question that we have within the ASEER group, and we'll have our panel actually on Wednesday to discuss this, is there are clearly tensions between the people, planet, and prosperity interface. As we look at the energy transition, we know that when we put up the prices on diesel in France, we got a huge revolt by the Gilets jaunes. What should Macron have done differently? He should have looked at what Sweden was doing in terms of their carbon tax, but maybe offset in terms of the way in which we look at labor taxation. So we have to become much more innovative, and that innovation needs to really go much beyond the labs. It needs universities, industry, and policymakers alongside communities working together to really think about innovation in a totally new way. And that's what we're calling upon in the ASEER group, and that's what we're trying to understand, is where are the best mechanisms, the levers to enable proper innovation, research and development to solve today's resilience issues, so that we are truly in a future-proofing scenario, but also dealing with short-term levers that we need right now.
Well, Sandrine, you make some really good points there, and I think that it brings us very naturally to the question that indeed I wanted to ask Lena as our next speaker, because one of the important themes of the European Green Deal is precisely this concept of a just transition. How do we make sure that we give proper attention to the socio-economic consequences of what is a fundamental change in the way that our societies operate? So I'd be really interested to hear from Lena what she wants to share with us on these social impacts, and what particular role for research and innovation can we identify in this social dimension. So Lena, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think, I have to say I very much agree with what Sandrine said earlier. It's actually quite interesting that you ask about social impacts, because in some way, I think we have to remember when we talk about the clean energy transition, it is we are only doing that for the people, right? So because we want to make Europe a worthwhile place to live in the future. And with that in mind, it's actually not sufficient to address social impacts of technology, because as Sandrine said, citizens will have to play a much more proactive role in that transition. It needs to be a societal transition where people are also driving the change. And exactly, if there is one thing that we have learned in the past during early renewable deployment, is that money and compensation is not a sustainable solution for discontent citizens. Real engagement, participation, empowerment can be, right? And if we bring that to energy research, we need to develop a much better, improved understanding of social identities, norms, and values in that decision making. And we need to understand the influences on people of the transition and experiences by people along the full value chain and life cycle of technologies. And that is still an area that needs to be explored very much on the research side. And then once we have gathered that understanding, we need to transfer it into usable tools so we can implement that. And I think here, cities and also local value creation options, they play a really important role. And in that, I think what we need to work on is on technical and social solutions that intertwine, right, in an interactive process. And that needs to be not only in the deployment phase where we say, okay, there is social impact, how can we deal with it? It needs to be already in the technology innovation process so that we can avoid creating those social impacts. And for that, there is a strong need for increasing influence of social science and humanities, SSH, in energy research. They need to come in earlier in the process and be part of the core of the research endeavor. I often met that people assume that R&I is mostly related to technology development and solving some engineering problems. But I disagree with that. The energy system is just as much a system of relationships between different actors than it is of infrastructure assets. So we need to acknowledge that and bring the social sciences into the research so that we can do ex-ante anticipation of potential impacts and create improved socially acceptable solutions instead of dealing with impacts. And I think we as a research community, we always need to be several steps ahead of what's going on out there in reality. So we need to deal a lot with this so that we can make renewable energies from being perceived as a nuisance to being a vehicle of driving positive change. And some areas that need to be explored are local jobs, welfare creation, and also empowerment. And you ask about fairness, the just transition that comes in from the Green Deal. That is something that is fairly new to energy research.
Yeah.
It also makes research a bit more philosophical. It's not only sufficient to ask how do we get best to some predefined sustainable solution. When we start talking about just and fairness, we also maybe asking where to go and with whom. So that is not finally figured out yet. So this idea about just transition brings in a whole new dimension of social research as well.
Okay.
A bit more practical, we need to demonstrate best practices for active involvement and engagement and create innovation processes along the value chain that are open for participation so that we can avoid negative impacts and create new solutions that are benefiting all parties.
Thanks very much, Lena, and some really important points there, which go to the heart of some of the challenges that we're facing within the European Union, whether it's at the level of policy, research, or industry. But I'd like to turn the discussion to a little more positive dimension. I mean, we are in the European Union, I think, rightly proud of our global leadership in the international debate on climate change and sustainability, and hugely active in the global community working on clean energy innovation in organizations like Mission Innovation, the Clean Energy Ministerial, and other global fora. And so I'd like to ask Nicola, as a representative of an international company with activities across the world, how does Europe sort of stand in the global clean energy community? And is there more specifically opportunities for greater engagement between public-private partnerships in order further to boost and promote our global reach in this very, very important topic?
Yeah, no, I think this partnership is key. It's key if we want to ride to the goal. Okay. And the reason for that is basically related to the fact that was also mentioned by the previous speakers. Innovation cannot be reduced in this phase to something related to a single topic. Okay, so it's not only technology innovation; it's also process innovation. That means also culture innovation. But it's not just process innovation; it's also business model innovation. Okay, that means to involve all the value chain in the innovation process. And it's also innovation competencies, because we are speaking of something that is evolving and requires new competencies. Okay, so it's something that only one player cannot drive effectively. I think it's almost impossible for the complexity of the innovation playground that we have in front of us, but also because we have a time constraint. So we need to be quick. And in order to be quick, we need to be open. We need to be inclusive. We need to cooperate. We need to interact among different players, covering different parts of what we need to innovate. Okay. So in this framework, I think public institutions can play a key role. Okay. They can play a key role in activating the ecosystem, in supporting the ecosystem, in engaging in the proper way the ecosystem, and so in creating the condition in order to make possible not only the innovation of technologies, but also to make this innovation sustainable from an economical point of view, and also useful, so able to generate value and to create new economical opportunities. Okay, so this is one important point. The other important point is related to reducing risk. Okay, so if we come to new technologies, and for example, if we come in the case of solar to heterojunction technology. That is a novel technology that has been developed, for example, in Catania, also thanks to public interaction and cooperation with public opportunities. In particular, Ampere project was an extraordinary experience that put together competencies from universities, research centers, industries in Europe, and allowed the development of the technology so far. But if we look beyond where we are, I think there is a step we need to cover. That is that to pass from a pilot dimension to industrial dimension. So there is a risk here to be covered. So for sure, the support in reducing this risk and in covering part of this risk can provide a unique lever in order to make possible such a scale up, okay, of the application. That means to transform a research project, a demonstration project, in an industrial initiative. So to receive the benefits that really we expect from innovation. That is not just to produce something new, but to generate new business opportunities able to create job and prosperity for the new generation while keeping sustainability as first priority.
Okay, thanks very much, Nicola. We have a couple of minutes left, and since we are, I think, at a crucial moment in the preparation of the transition to our new Research and Innovation Framework Programme, I'd like to ask the panel one final quick-fire round of one sentence on what would be your top recommendation to us in the Commission, the European Parliament, the partners in the member states, for the energy dimension of the future Horizon Europe programme. One thing that we should really focus on that perhaps we've not given enough attention to. So we'll start with Lena, please. What's your advice to us?
Well, I think what is very important for the EU to focus on, not to break apart the research into several silos, technologies. Because it's an interdisciplinary challenge that goes across. We need to develop the systems thinking while still developing the technologies and the technology innovation, but in a holistic way.
Okay.
So do not break away into silos.
No silos. Okay. Sandrine.
Well, to build on that, I would say optimization of the systems approach, political will, and boldness. Really look at transformative innovation, because we can't play around anymore in this decade of action.
Okay, thanks. Nicola, last word from you.
For sure, simplification, because I think we need to be quick and we need to be effective in this period, and focus on industrial perspective. Okay, that means selection. So select those initiatives that are able really to create the huge impact and the biggest impact on industry, and not only on industry, but on the economy as a whole.
Okay, well, look, thank you all very much. This session, I feel, could have gone on all afternoon, but I really want to thank Sandrine, Lena, and Nicola for their carefully prepared and very insightful contributions. I think we've covered a lot of ground, whether it's on the questions of political will, sector integration, the need for a real boost for renewables, but to do that in a way which is sensitive to the socio-economic conditions, the need not to forget fundamental research, to see this all as a joined up system, and the many other themes. So I think you've really given us some rich inputs, some thoughts for the future preparation of Horizon Europe, but also more generally to enable us to continue to be an authoritative leading voice from the European Union in the global community working on clean energy innovation as part of our broader sustainability agenda. So I want to thank everybody who's been following this session on accelerating clean energy innovation at the EU Research and Innovation Days, and wish you a great future for the rest of the conference. There are many other themes, whether it's on the missions, on Horizon Europe itself, or the broader agenda, post-COVID recovery, the Green Deal. It's your moment to engage, and we're really happy to have you with us. So thank you all very much, and have a great day. And thanks, colleagues.